Good day, this is Dimitri Lascaris coming to you from the hills outside of Kalamata, Greece with my latest rant of the week. Today I'm going to be ranting about the existential danger posed to all of humanity by the genocidal entity known as Israel. Now, it may not surprise many of you to hear me say that Israel is an existential threat to all of humanity, given the way that it has conducted itself not only in the last 18 months, but in fact during the course of its entire existence. But I think the degree to which Israel threatens all of humanity is not necessarily well understood by many people. And there are basically three reasons why I say that it is an existential threat to all of humanity, and severe one. Perhaps at this particular moment in human history, it is the greatest threat of all confronting the human species. Basically, there are three reasons in my view why this is the case. The first of them is Israel's vulnerability to destruction in a full-scale conventional war. The second of them is Israel's hyperaggression. And the third reason is Israel's nuclear arsenal. So let me unpack each of those elements one at a time. Israel is a country with a relatively small population. It has about 9.8 million people within the internationally recognized boundaries of Israel. And 20% of its population within those boundaries is Palestinian. So you're looking at an Israeli Jewish population who would be called upon to wage war, and are being called upon to wage war now, of approximately 7.8 million. If you include the Palestinians living within the occupied territories, the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, the Palestinian population and the Jewish population in historic Palestine today is roughly equal. Depending upon how many people, innocents, the genocidal entity has slaughtered in Gaza, which remains unknown, it is in fact possible that the Palestinian population of historic Palestine constitutes a slight majority at this particular point. So, of course, those people are understandably seething with anger at the genocidal entity, and if they were presented with the opportunity to contribute to its destruction, many of them would not pass that opportunity up. It's only inevitable that they would be inclined to engage in large-scale armed resistance, as some of them are currently doing, in the face of the barbarism that they've had to endure over the course of Israel's history, and particularly during the past 18 months. So this population, by the way, of Israeli Jews within Israel, less than 8 million, is smaller than the population of certain major cities within the region of West Asia. So, for example, it's much smaller than the population of Istanbul, which I think is in the range of 15 million. It's smaller than the population of Tehran, which is in a range, I think, of about 10 million, and also smaller than the population of Cairo and the population of Baghdad. So we're talking about a truly pipsqueak population by the standards of West Asia. Secondly, territorially, Israel is also a pipsqueak. Its territory encompasses approximately 22,000 square kilometers, whereas the territory of Iran encompasses approximately 1.65 million square kilometers. So the size of Israel geographically is tiny compared to that of its principal rival in the region. And also the feature of topography is relevant here. Israel is a very flat land. It has no mountains that exceed 4,000 meters in height, whereas Iran is a very mountainous country and has over 20 mountains that exceed over 4,000 meters in height. And of course, this has implications for both ground combat and aerial combat. It is much more difficult to conduct ground combat in extremely mountainous terrain, and also to strike targets from the air in extremely mountainous terrain, than it is when you're operating within a relatively flat topography. So for all of these reasons, Israel is vulnerable from the perspective of large-scale conventional warfare, particularly if it takes place over an extended period of time. And as we've seen, has been demonstrated beyond a shadow of a doubt, Iran has the capacity, without sending any forces to the border regions of Israel, to inflict enormous damage on the country. We saw this, for example, when it sent hypersonic missiles pouring through Israel's air defenses, backed up by the air defenses of the United States, Britain, and perhaps others, to strike one of the most protected military assets in the genocidal entity, namely the Nevatim Air Base. And here's just as a reminder, some footage of those missiles striking the air base repeatedly last year. So that covers the issue of Israel's conventional vulnerability. I should add that Israel is starting from a point of weakness if it gets into a full-blown war with Iran, because Israel has already been fighting a multi-front war for the past 18 months or so. And in fact, credible reports emerging from Israel suggest that in excess of 100,000 reservists have refused to show up for military service. And the country is descending into chaos. A recent poll done by a reputable polling agency within Israel found that somewhere in the range of 60% of the Jewish population of Israel believe that civil war is a realistic danger at this point. Now, the second reason I cited for Israel constituting an immense existential threat to humanity is its hyper-aggressivity. As we've seen over and over again, this is a country that knows no law, observes no law, considers itself to have a license to kill, even to kill Americans, as it has done repeatedly with complete impunity. And the more the country is allowed to commit crimes and atrocities with no consequences, the more aggressive it becomes. And we've seen it's escalated its aggressions against Iran systematically over the past decade or so. It began by launching sophisticated cyber attacks against Iran's nuclear facilities. It arranged either directly or through proxies to murder Iranian nuclear scientists. Then it elevated its escalation by destroying Iran's consulate in Damascus, killing an Iranian general and other Iranian officials. The Trump administration, probably at Israel's behest, massacred or murdered a number of people at Baghdad airport in 2020, including Iran's top general, Qasem Soleimani. The Israelis murdered Hamas political leader Ismail Haniyeh when he was in Tehran last year for the inauguration of Iran's new president, Mr. Pezeshkian. And now it's openly beating the drums of war and calling upon the Trump administration to launch an all-out assault on the Islamic Republic. So in a situation where the country has demonstrated hyper-aggressivity and its aggression is becoming palpably more severe, the greater it is accorded impunity by the international community, it is inevitable, it's simply inevitable that sooner or later this country is going to engage in a provocation which will force the Iranian government to bring to bear the full scope of its military capabilities against the genocidal entity. And when that happens, it could happen this year, folks, all bets are off, because Israel will then sustain, in all likelihood, catastrophic damage, the likes of which it has never experienced. And then the leaders of the country, who are, by all appearances, criminally insane, will be confronted with a nuclear option. And in that regard, I should point out, for those of you who aren't aware, that last year, Israel's deranged Minister of Heritage openly, publicly called for the genocidal entity to use a nuclear bomb on Gaza, where the resistance forces confronting Israel's genocide forces are much less capable, much less armed, I should say, than the military of the Islamic Republic. And so therefore, if ministers in the government are prepared to contemplate the use of a nuclear bomb on Gaza, no one should have any illusions about their willingness to use nuclear weapons on Iran. And as I say, they are on a trajectory to provoke the Iranian government to bring to bear the full scope of its military capabilities, in which case they will think quite seriously about using nuclear weapons. And given their prior behavior, we should assume that they will they will do so if they think that the existence of Israel is in fact threatened. And they've made no bones about that, about their willingness to use nuclear weapons if the existence of Israel is in fact threatened. Now, in this regard, it's important to bear in mind that the Netanyahu regime has repeatedly employed a particular shtick to justify its heinous conduct. Namely, it has repeatedly asked the American public to contemplate what the US government would do if it were in a similar situation. So, for example, last year, or I believe it is actually in late 2023, when this genocidal rampage in Gaza began, various spokespersons for the Israeli entity were, running around the Western media saying, well, take a look at what the Allies did to Dresden during World War II, the atrocious firebombing and all the civilians that they killed in order to protect themselves from the Nazi scourge. Well, if they can firebomb Dresden in this manner, why can't we destroy Gaza in order to protect ourselves from the evil scourge of Hamas? This is exactly the kind of reasoning that these people employ. And what country, of course, is the only country in human history to have actually used these weapons of mass destruction? Well, my friends, it's the United States government. The United States government annihilated hundreds of thousands of Japanese, exterminated tens of thousands of innocent Japanese children in Nagasaki and Hiroshima at a point in time when Japan was on the verge of surrender. The United States was not then confronted by any existential threat, and it did this purely for the purpose of demonstrating that it was now the big dog, the unchallenged superpower of the globe. And so if the Israelis feel that US crimes justify their own, why would they not think that they are as entitled as the United States to use these weapons of mass destruction on a foe that they regard as an existential threat? I don't think we should assume they would have any hesitation in doing that if they thought it was necessary to defeat the enemy. Now, some of you may be asking, what does this ultimately have to do with me? Because if Israel nukes Iran, that's happening halfway across the world. Well, quite apart from the immorality of that position, we should be, as citizens of the globe, as human beings, appalled and outraged that anybody would employ nuclear weapons, including and particularly against civilian populations, especially when the party employing the nuclear weapons is the aggressor, is the rogue state. But even if you don't particularly care about what happens to the people of the region, you should not assume that Israel's use of nuclear weapons isn't going to affect you living in the West. And that's because of the danger of a nuclear winter. Over the years, numerous scientists, nuclear experts, agricultural experts, climatologists have studied the effects of a small-scale nuclear war. And in their judgment, a nuclear war involving the use of as few as 100 nuclear bombs could emit so much soot and other pollutants into the atmosphere that the Earth's climate would experience a dramatic and sudden cooling. And that would cause devastating damage to the agricultural industry around the world. And interestingly, by their estimates, the countries that would be hardest hit are those in the northern part of the Northern Hemisphere, including Canada, Scandinavia, and other countries of Northern Europe. If, in fact, that were to happen, a nuclear war involving the use of as few as 100 nuclear bombs were to provoke a nuclear winter, their judgment is that hundreds of millions of people and perhaps even billions of people would die of starvation. And this would also cause tremendous geopolitical instability. Governments would fall. There would be huge flows of migrants to less damaged areas of the world. That in itself would cause a great increase in political instability, and we're already seeing a significant degree of that when it comes to migration. And so Israel's ability to provoke a nuclear winter is something that should deeply concern us all, even if we only care about our own communities, our own countries, and our own prosperity. And in that regard, we have to bear in mind that the credible estimates of the size of Israel's nuclear arsenal are in the range of 90 to 400 bombs. So they have the capacity to provoke a nuclear winter. Now, the media are out there reporting that the The Americans and the Iranians have had positive discussions, and they're now progressing to a third and more technical stage of those negotiations. And for the love of God and the love of humanity, I very much hope, as I'm sure you do, that those negotiations will be successful. But as I've stated repeatedly on Reason to Resist, there are strong reasons to doubt that they will be successful, because at the end of the day, the Iranians do have a legal right to engage in enrichment, as other countries do, including the Netherlands, Germany, the United States, Russia. And the Iranian government has made clear that they're not seeking a nuclear weapon. It is the judgment of the U.S. intelligence agencies in their 2025 threat assessment that Iran is not, in fact, seeking a nuclear weapon. So their position is, we are not going to give up our enrichment program. That is non-negotiable. I think they would clearly accept reasonable limits on the degree to which they enrich uranium, but they're not going to get rid of it altogether, whereas the Trump administration and Israel are demanding exactly that. In fact, Israel is demanding not only an end to enrichment, but the dismantling of Iran's entire nuclear program. Again, this is something they have a lawful right to do, and why would Iran give up a peaceful civil nuclear program when those who are threatening it not only have a peaceful nuclear program, but also have nuclear weapons themselves? Another aspect of these negotiations, which in my view makes it likely that they're going to fail, is that this isn't really about Iran's nuclear weapons at the end of the day. As I said, the U.S. intelligence agencies have confirmed that Iran is not seeking a nuke. And even if it did develop one, the chances that it would use it in an aggressive manner are minuscule, because it knows it would be wiped off the mat almost immediately. The purpose of having a nuclear weapon would be to deter an attack on Iran, not to use it in an offensive manner. So what is really going on here? What is really going on here is that the United States government and Israel want to turn Iran into a vassal. They want Iran to give up its ballistic conventional missiles, which are the most potent weapon that they possess to deter an attack on Iran. They want Iran to stop supporting resistance groups in the region. In other words, they want Iran to become the kind of country that existed under the corrupt and brutal Shah before he was overthrown in the Islamic Revolution. And folks, that's just not going to happen. So at the end of the day, what are the prospects that the Trump administration is going to agree to a negotiated solution to this conflict? It seems to me that they're rather low, although, as I say, I hope very much that those negotiations succeed. So I believe, and you should be concerned, that we are on a trajectory to a full-blown war between Iran on the one hand and Israel and the United States on the other. And have no doubt that if that war happens, other Western powers are going to come in on the side of Israel. Almost certainly Britain will do so, which has nuclear weapons, and very likely France will do so as well. And Germany will, of course, the fascists in Germany will support Israel no matter what crime it commits. And then you have on the other side, China and Russia, each of which has enough nuclear weapons to destroy the West. In fact, Russia has enough to destroy the world many times over, and each of them are in a strategic partnership agreement with Iran. And for a variety of reasons that we've discussed on Reason to Resist, they are not going to sit idly by and do nothing of any consequence if this full-blown war is launched by Israel and the United States against Iran, particularly if they believe that the Iranians have made a good faith effort to be reasonable, which by all appearances is what they're doing. So at this stage, folks, I believe, for all of these reasons, that the Israeli entity and its nukes constitute the greatest threat to humanity at this particular point in time. And this brings me to the politicians of the West. You know, recently, and as we reported on Reason to Resist, we witnessed a moment of true recklessness and irresponsibility in the leaders' debates in the Canadian election, which is about to occur in about 3 days' time. And in that debate, the English language debate, both of the leading candidates, Mark Carney, the current Liberal Prime Minister, and his opponent, Pierre Poilievre, the yapping Zionist Chihuahua from the Conservative Party of Canada, they raised the subject of Iran. And both of them were in accord that something had to be done about Iran's nuclear weapon. Neither of them dismissed the idea of launching a war against Iran. They didn't even express a desire that a war be avoided. And here, in fact, is what happened in those two exchanges.
Question, and we have less than 5 minutes for it here. What role should Canada play in the other major international crisis in this world, in the Middle East and the war in Gaza? Pierre Poilievre, would you start us off on that? What role can Canada play?
Well, first of all, we must condemn Hamas and, more importantly, the terror sponsors in Tehran who initiated the attacks, the horrific attacks of October 7th. We need to defeat the terrorists so that all the peoples of the world can live in peace and defend the right of, yes, Palestinians to have their own lives free from the oppression of Hamas dictators and Iranian intervention, while Israel has the ability to live in freedom and peace.
But it has to be a viable and free Palestinian state, living side by side in peace and security with the state of Israel. I will underscore one other thing. Mr. Poilievre rightly mentioned Iran, the Iranian sponsors in this region. We have to be clear-eyed about the fundamental risks of Iran and do everything with our international partners to check it and turn it.
So you'll see that while they were saber-rattling against the Islamic Republic, they did not say a single word about the fact that Israel has nukes and, in fact, has threatened to use them. A minister of the Israeli government on Gaza, no less, a territory that is being ravaged by the genocidal regime. Now, in my view, this should be an automatic disqualification for public office, because if you're not even willing to acknowledge that the genocidal entity has nuclear weapons, then how can you have a rational discussion about what to do with them? By making it taboo, even to state the obvious that Israel has nukes, you are precluding a solution that or the discussion about a solution that will negate this immense threat to the existence of humanity. How can it be that people stand idly by and consider seriously voting for these characters when they behave in such a reckless, such an irresponsible, and frankly, criminally insane manner? It just blows my mind. Again, I repeat, the refusal even to acknowledge that Israel has nukes should be an automatic disqualification for public office in any Western country, and indeed any country in the world. Now, before I close it out, folks, I just want to bring people up to date about the debate challenge that I've issued to a bunch of Zionist lawyers in Canada. As you may recall, after a huge brouhaha involving something called the Advocate Society in Canada, where Zionist lawyers deplatformed a Syrian refugee, Tarek Haddad, simply because he had the audacity to express sympathy for the victims of Israel's genocide, I challenged two lawyers, Daryl Cruz and Jonathan Lysis, to a debate on the question of whether Israel is committing genocide. I notified them of my challenge by email on April 5th, and neither of them to date has accepted my challenge. And so several days ago, I expanded my debate challenge to 23 or 24 other very prominent, very successful Zionist lawyers who had signed a disgraceful letter vilifying some students at the law school at Toronto Metropolitan University because they had condemned Israel and come to the defense of Palestinians in late 2023. I emailed that challenge to those lawyers about 4 days ago. And to date, I have not heard from any of them. I also included in my challenge former Supreme Court of Canada Justice Rosalie Abella, because in January of last year, she authored an op-ed after having retired from the Supreme Court of Canada, in which she castigated South Africa for having brought a genocide case against Israel in the International Court of Justice. And I've not heard from her either. I sent the debate challenge to her email address at Harvard University, where she is a visiting professor at this time. Now, you might say, and some have actually said this, people who are clearly sympathetic to Israel have said this on social media, well, why would they debate a pipsqueak like you? Look, I don't want to, sound pompous or anything, but in the Canadian legal profession, I don't think it's fair to characterize me as a pipsqueak. I'm very well known to these people. I have litigated against a number of these people in high-stakes, complex litigation. I have a record of success as a lawyer, which I think would make me a credible opponent in a debate of this nature. And I'm also somebody who is very well known within human rights circles in Canada as an outspoken critic of Israel, an outspoken defender of the Palestinian cause. So if these people believe in the strength of their position, all of these very capable advocates, that they can destroy me in a debate because, of course, the evidence doesn't demonstrate that Israel, the Middle East's only democracy, is engaging in, a crime as heinous as genocide. And as Rosalie Abella said, it was shameful and unconscionable that anybody would even level that allegation against Israel. Well, if they actually believe that the evidence and the law supports their position, then they would view my debate challenge as an extraordinary opportunity to discredit the Palestinian solidarity movement, because within Canada, as I said, I am a well-known defender of the Palestinian cause. And yet none of them, not a single one, to this time, has accepted my challenge. Now, is that because I'm a superior debater? Hell no. These are all people who are eminently capable of defending their position. The only logical inference that one can draw from their refusal to take this opportunity to discredit an outspoken defender of the Palestinian cause in Canada is that they can't discredit me because the evidence of Israel's crimes is simply overwhelming, and the law is overwhelmingly in favor of the Palestinians. They don't want to debate me because they know they're going to lose. And they're going to lose on the facts and the law. It's as simple as that. If any of them happens to be watching this rant, I repeat that my offer remains open. And in fact, I'm going to sweeten the pot. I will personally pay out of my own pocket for a venue that accommodates at least 200 people to hold this debate. And if we find a mutually acceptable mediator, I'll give you a veto right over anybody, a moderator, any moderator who is going to be assigned to this task. If that moderator needs reasonable compensation for their services, I'll pay it out of my own pocket. So you won't have to pay a dime, and I'm willing to do this debate in any of 3 major cities in Ontario, where these lawyers, almost all of them, are situated, namely Ottawa, the capital of Canada, Toronto, and also in London, Ontario, where I'm from. So I'll let you choose the venue. We will jointly choose the moderator. I'll pay the moderator's wages out of my own pocket if they need to be paid reasonable compensation, and I will pay for a venue that will accommodate at least 200 spectators. I await your reply, and I very much hope that one of you fanatical Zionists will summon the courage to take this subject on with me in a formal debate. This is Dimitri Lascaris coming to you from the hills outside of Kalamata on April 26, 2025.